The Heist of Hyderabad, they call it. England surprisingly win the first test against India in Hyderabad. The West Indies make a historic win at the Gabatoir. I'm here with my podcasting pal, George Bottomley, to cover it all. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Got through January.
Just about. How did you find it? This is your worst time of year, isn't it?
No, well, you know what? Usually we did a pod around this time of the year where I was moaning about cricket in general, learning. We're a big cycle of franchise tournaments and these kind of things and doing. But the great thing about watching a winter tour in South Africa is you can watch it in the morning. Weekend sport is there. It's great to get a bit of breakfast, get a few coffees down here, as we've done, in pods gone by. And to see England win in India was not just unexpected. It was just it's refreshing. I think you grimaced, well, certainly after the first couple of days, thinking this was going to be a familiar tale where we just can't cope with the conditions, which are abnormal to what we're used to. And it's turned out to be arguably, well, I think it's probably one of England's best wins ever. I know they've had success in India in 2011, was it? But I don't know. I mean, it's they come thick and fast, the test matches, don't they? We've got another one this Friday. But I was saying to you, we're going to cover all the different variables in this pod, but it seems like a real opportunity is building for England to do something pretty special.
A good week for Test cricket.
Great week for Test cricket.
A good week for Test cricket means a good week for you in cricket, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, there's been so much cricket content coming out of this, and for the traditional cricket fan, it's kind of like a dream scenario, isn't it? I think I share things, and so the non-cricket person who you speak to, they're a little bit like, why are you so elated for the West Indies? And I think a really good point was raised. I can't remember which podcast said it, but if you're of an era, to which not many are, where the West Indies have been quite strong in your lifetime, it's quite heartwarming to see them perform, isn't it? They are shackled these days by the fact that it's economically difficult to put cricket on in their country. A lot of their players are now more or less freelancers, where the flurry of private investment tournaments means that they never really have a full strength team to pick from. And if you've grown up or for the 70s, 80s West Indies, even when we were kids, 90s, early 2000 West Indies were competitive, weren't they?
All right.
With Lara and Chandapal, people I remember,
Walsh,
Chris Gale, So for them to do something that England find particularly hard to do, and the story of obviously Shamark Joseph, which we'll come on to later.
Get on to all this, yeah.
It's been a really, really good couple of days, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It feels like Test cricket needs a kick up the backside sometimes, and this week was probably the kick up the backside that everyone needed in the January blues to enjoy cricket. It's
kind of come at a good time as well, because there's been a lot of talk. I think we're now hearing like C-level directors of cricket boards talk about preserving Test cricket, and then for it, well, yeah, but for it to produce a kind of weekend like that, it sort of demonstrates how good the product could be if given the right sort of resources.
Yeah, I don't disagree that there's obviously lots of talent around. I still love for it for people like you and me. I think that when the chief executives talk, I think a lot of it's hot air. But, we'll see. Would love to be proved wrong on that one, but anyway.
Shall we bask in the Heist?
Yes.
The Heist of Hyderabad. What a good name that is.
Yeah.
Really, really
cool.
Where
did you nick that from?
I think it was Wisdom, maybe.
I think everyone's been used. So
label it that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly that. I mean, to run off basically what happened, England win the toss, don't they?
Yeah. Put
a modest, actually, it sounds really pathetic, but I kind of at 250, I thought, because at one point England were 5 down at 150, weren't they?
Yeah.
For them to scrape, Ben Stokes stuck around and we scraped to 250. I actually thought, well, at least we're in the game. Were you thinking at that point?
Yeah.
250 in the game. India come out heavy, big total. England do well to claw it back. And then, Ollie Pope plays an innings that on paper he should be able to perform, but it's what you would class as career defining. Ricky Ponting kind of, I think he would lower the grip on his bat and he would write down, like, with the bat he was using, significant scores. It might be something like 182 Candy 2001 or something like that, or Adelaide 2003 or something like that. He would have big scores there. That is pretty career defining from Ollie Pope, wasn't it?
I think the big thing for Ollie Pope is that you won't call him like a fair weather player, but he has a little bit of the early Ian Bells in him, that he probably scores runs against the lesser teams. When it's your Australias and your Indias, he's found wanting. Now, thinking back to Ian Bells and Modern Great, struggled against Shane Warne early in his career in 2005. Pope has obviously struggled against Ashwin in the past, early in his career. It's probably an innings that he really needed. It's probably an innings that he wouldn't have played, well, particularly the style and the nature of the innings, reverse sweeping and sweeping pretty much everything. It's not an innings that he would have played under previous managements, and it's probably symptomatic of the style of management of this team, the style of play. It could be career defining. It really does take off the weight from Root, Stokes, when people like Duckett, even Duckett's like 47s and stuff like that. But that top three just starting to play a part and get a more mature space in this batting order does take the weight off.
It just makes you think, have we just been arrogant to it all this time? Everyone talks about how difficult it is to play in India. Is it just taken so long to wake up and smell the coffee? And what I mean by that is that the conventional way of playing cricket, the grinding it out kind of thing, using playing with a straight bat, all the sort of prerequisite things they tell you about playing spin ball. Is that a little bit all old hat? Is that a little bit more where, the inventive modern day way of playing, the new inventive shots, Joe Root's practicing the net left-handed, this kind of thing? Has it taken innovation for people to finally realise that it doesn't work in India for a reason, this kind of batting? And does it take a quirky management setup like McCullum brings? Does it take an inventive captain like Stokes? Does it take modern day players that have been brought up in a childhood where T20 cricket has blossomed and these shots have become more apparent, watching people like Kevin Peterson when they would have grown up like they would have done? Is this finally, the Western world understanding there's a new approach to playing in India? Because you would probably say, if you were looking at Silverwood's reign of England, he brought what I would class as a traditional county setup,
picking stoic approach.
Yeah, stoic approach. Exactly. Do you know what I mean? And is this just now us finally just realising that, there's a way of doing this, as opposed to trying to, survive it, counteract it? Do you know what I mean?
Has the baseball team played India before? Because the one thing I would say is I think it's very hard to start against the baseball team.
If I'm right, did we not have that replay game?
Yeah. Because I think that all teams seem to kind of struggle against baseball in their first kind of look at it. And then maybe grow. We saw this you saw it less so with Australia. But people are kind of working it out, aren't they? Everyone likes to have a look at it, likes to kind of stick to their plans and then starts to adapt to it as they go along. In terms, I suppose Head played very well in India, didn't he? I always think Head is almost kind of a bastion of baseball before baseball, wasn't he? In the way that he started to shape his career in Test cricket, it might be the approach that more of the Senna teams take when they go to play in India. It'll be good to see it over a 5 test. I'm cautious.
I think to go on to it, we're going to get onto bowling a little bit. It's kind of that if we'd have lost this Test match, I would have still called it encouraging. It's not crash and burn. They try new things, And as you said, you look at the top order and there's the starts from batsmen, the starts from Crawley, the starts from Duckett's, and you think, well, if they're getting 30s, can they make them 50s? And you're not too far away, but to come away and obviously win this, makes me think that, they've actually thought this through. They had a lot of stick England about the preparation, saying they're not coming to India playing hardcore Test matches. Steve Armisen went on TalkSport. Ben Stokes came up and corrected him. They opted for this Abu Dhabi route, and there's arguments to say that preparation is completely different these days. The days are gone of where you're going to go there for 6 months and for a big bilateral series, play loads of A and B teams, that kind of thing. So there's elements to say that the preparation has been good, from what you've seen on evidence in the first Test. Big nut for Pope. Stokes showing leadership in the first innings. Anything more batting that impressed you in this Test match?
Duckett impresses me. I think that one thing that we do have in this side, although they're not all of this ilk, Duckett's probably most comfortable against spin. I'd say Folkes is similar.
Yeah.
Bairstow's a decent player of spin. Root's obviously got a good record against spin. This is probably the batting lineup that looks, for a long time, more stable in India.
Yeah.
Has more records in Asia when it comes to batting. So I think if they can knit the batting together, the batting's never been as much of a concern in India as much as it was the inexperience of the bowling.
Yeah. I want to say, I know we've constantly debated at length of this. I want to say how another Ben Folkes batting performance has provided that cushion for someone like Ollie Pope to build. He is, no doubt, must have a reputation now. We lose count the amount of times he's stuck around for a partner.
Yeah, he does stick around. I think that the key in this one for Pope was actually probably Rehan and Hartley's runs at 8 and 9 were really valuable in this.
I mean, Folkes in the second innings got a grubbing, and I think he was looking really, really good. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of things about Folkes. You know, watching him keep in the second innings is. I really valued this Test match having a quality keeper. Yeah. I think I don't know what it is. I just think he installs an extra layer of confidence around the bowlers.
I think if you're playing in India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, where the pitches really do turn, and you need a high quality wicket keeper who's almost kind of
he's beyond a high quality wicket keeper, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a
specialist,
probably the best
that is able to bat as well.
Yeah. So I think he's really valuable in Sri Lanka, India, and Bangladesh. Less so around the world in terms of at home in England or in Australia or whatever. I can understand the approach not to picking in those places, but you do probably need football. He is a must pick in India, and I think we saw that even when Brook was around side, Folkes was probably always going to be the keeper.
Before we get onto the bowling, which we will, because we saw another amazing debut from Hartley, it shows that I think McCullum isn't afraid to utilise a squad and adapt accordingly to the conditions. You know what I mean? He's taught this, about playing 4 spinners in this next Test match. They very much see people's roles as rotational. They made the call on Ben Folkes prior to the Ashes, a brave call. They wanted to go with Bairstow. I think what he probably does well is keeps the squad collectively together. So when people want to come into the team, they know that there's a part to play. So they probably had a word in his ear saying, look, you're not going to feature in the Ashes, Ben, but when it comes to India, first name on the sheet. Do you know what I mean? Right, Hartley, hit me with that, because you actually gave me the sort of breakdown. I think everyone would be lying to themselves if they had extensive sort of knowledge on Hartley and what he was going to bring to the Test side. What do you think? First of all, what was the premise for picking him, and just talk me through his performance?
Yeah, so I think the premise of picking him is obviously the body composition, really, more than anything. Axar Patel's done very well in India. Ashwin's obviously not a small guy. I think the tall spinners are better than your English style finger spinner. They probably want someone like Hartley to really, force it down into the wicket, try and get it
a quicker ball almost.
Well, yeah, probably more like that one day kind of style bowling that we've seen from spinners of really pushing it into the pitch. From that height, you get angles, you'll get a bit more bounce. I think there's one DRS decision, which was probably in the first innings that England were bowling that Hartley had, that was just going over the stumps because of his bounce. I think that is important in India. And you saw that Jack Leach probably didn't turn it as much. Obviously, he was injured. A bit smaller of a guy, a bit more classical English bowler. They've probably gone more with a money ball style approach in terms of trying to say what characteristics are going to work for these pitches rather than saying who are our best spinners. It's probably why they've gone for Hartley and your Bashirs, who are both taller guys over a Dawson, for example.
What's the thing? When I said this to you, I joked in the second innings saying, if we can nick Murali and Hasaranga here, and you were talking about wrist spinners and things. What is the difference between, why there's a theory that wrist spinners aren't as successful. So Shane Warne's record in India is always kind of brought up as a kind of flaw in his greatness.
Yeah.
Why is that? What is from what people on the face value, it's pitches that spin. So why is someone who is a wrist spinner less likely to be successful as a finger spinner?
It's a good question. I don't have all the answers on that. I think on these modern pitches, it does feel like the pace that you bowl is really important.
So someone who's quite floaty and relies on the ball to jag, is less likely to see that. Yeah,
and we've seen Adil Rashid, for example, in the white ball game, hasn't done as well in India. I suppose the other side of the coin for wrist spin records in India is probably that Indians see a lot more spin, a lot more used to it. It's not as much of a mystery art, to probably play it better. Ultimately, I do think you always have to be cautious playing wrist spinners in India just because of the record. And finger spinners probably give you a little bit more control against batsmen who play high quality spin on a regular basis.
Hartley, answer me this: in regimes gone by, does he come back from that first innings? Because he went very heavy in his first innings. There was people already getting the knives out, saying, he looks like a complete part timer, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Does the trust system and the freedom of expression that McCullum and Stokes bring, surely that that allows people who are debutants who do start their first game to be able to pick themselves up from those situations.
Yeah, I think it was a stark realisation of what England had when we started our first innings bowling. 250 when we came off the pitch.
It looked a long first innings, didn't it?
I thought 250 on the pitches that India had previously produced against us might be a competitive score. Hartley bowls his first over, and you think, "Oh God, this could be a long slog." But
he looked nervy, didn't he? That first innings.
He did,
yeah.
And Stokes kept him on for a long time. Didn't blink really. I would have taken him off if I was captain.
We almost, you don't think there's I almost want to call it Kerrigan syndrome.
Yeah.
When an English spinner starts off, that's everyone's immediate sort of go-to, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it. It's not just English spinners, really. You saw it back in the day with Xavier Doherty. Is that if your spinner's having a bit of a tough time and you're against high-quality players of spin, they can start to take you around the park, and the captain's got a decision to make. Obviously, this is a little bit different when we had 4 spinners in this Test match. But Stokes didn't blink. He got a couple of wickets in terms of the team got a couple of wickets. Hartley got the one DRS that was going over the stump to probably give him a bit of confidence against Gill. And then ultimately, where does the psychology of baseball come in? It's to say, you probably come off and say, we expected that, it's all right. Like,
your first game.
You average 40 in first class cricket. We pick you for a reason. We think you've got skills to take wickets. You're not going to do it every time.
And that is one of the biggest fundamentals of baseball, isn't it? It's taking 10 wickets.
Yeah.
It's at an expense which you don't really take too much attention to. It's picking up wickets, isn't it?
You saw Root come on in the first innings, gets 4. Primary spinner in that first innings.
Now the 4th best all-round in the world ranked.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah, he is a good spinner. He's probably underutilised and has been underutilised by previous regimes. I think he's a really good asset in India because of the style of bowling. It's that one-day bowling again, firing it.
I think he likes to tag himself as a part-timer. I think it adds more pressure to the batsman. If you think, I'm a part-timer, what to expect, and then you can catch people off guard a little bit. I mean, it's an amazing win. I mean, Hartley came back. I watched him on the Sunday morning, and he really had it on a string. The ball that he gets Barra out with the wicketkeeper is it's a serious spin ball. Delivery. It deceives him. It beats him for length. It's just it's completely the opposite to what you saw in the first innings. England were in complete control. I almost thought at the end, that it didn't come down to the wire, but you were messaging me about, God, I don't want to have another wicket down before they have 70 left. You start playing these calculations in your mind, don't you? Once we had the 2 tail enders in with 35 in,
you're fine though.
You're back to England there.
Yeah, and it's a very good result. I think there's a lot left in the India tank. I wouldn't kind of underestimate India right now.
I think what it does do is it means that England can lose the next 2 Test matches quite horrendously, and the win's still on. The series win is still on. That's how important it is for that first. It's like when you go down under and you go to Australia and you lose. If you lose Gabba and Adelaide, you're practically staring down the barrel of 5-0, aren't you? to the way momentum shifts on series. But I don't know. There's just something different about this setup where you feel like they've just got, something ahead of the curve when it comes to a strategy. Stokes' interview after the game was brilliant. He says people don't think this, but I'm a massive observer of the game, and you've got to you drink the Kool-Aid of it, because I think you look at it and go, there's clearly some thought behind this. I mean, the next Test match is going to be fascinating. Do India completely send out a huge Bunsen and hope to spin? But then you look at it and go, well, they've got injuries to Jadeja, so you're throwing in a less accomplished spinner. There's not going to be one of the best spinners in the game, which Jadeja is. Big expectation on Ashwin then, and obviously Axar Patel, and then Washington Sundar has even added to the squad, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. On your point around you could lose next two tests badly and you're still in the series, I get kind of the mathematics of that, but I think the reality is we need to win this test while Jadeja and Rahul are out, just because Jadeja, Rahul and Kohli, three of India's biggest players, the window's open there that if you don't take your opportunity, good sides do come back into series, don't they?
It does feel like, the opportunity other teams get when our wheels come off.
Yeah.
In Australia, where someone's got into an altercation, someone's injured, someone's had to go home.
Yeah.
It feels like this feels a ripe opportunity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is where you've got to strike.
Yeah. And from a pitch perspective, what do India do? I think that the balance of this pitch was the right balance to beat England on, because I don't think it brought England spinners into it. It wasn't like we could rock up and start turning some off spinners out and we'd get wickets, like we've seen in the past when we last toured though. But you could get runs on it. India should have got more runs than they got in that first innings. They did give away a lot of wickets. So I'd expect them to go with a similar pitch to what we saw in the first test. I think Washington Sundar will come in for Jadeja. I'm unsure who'll come in for Rahul. I think
it's interesting because the modern greatness of this India team, which is probably its strongest ever Test team, is its unusual sort of contributions of quality pace bowlers.
Yeah,
Bumrah, Shami.
Got Shami right now, have they? They've got Siraj and Bumrah.
I mean, I'm talking generally about the collection of pace bowlers.
That is another way they could go, isn't it?
So they could, if they think about it, think, well, if we can't, our top spinners aren't available. We know we've got quality pace, but England probably won't change their team. Do we put a slightly greener pitch out there? It is one of the humorous things about India is obviously what sort of pitch they're going to throw.
Yeah.
You generally don't know. I think they have a clear influence on pitches, which they get very sensitive about when you bring it up. But I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it? And England have already started playing the mind games, haven't they? McCullum's talking about playing four spinners.
Yeah.
So.
And what would you do with the balance for the next test?
See, the issue you've always got is Mark Wood's a warm-up away from being out for the series, isn't he?
Yeah.
But I did like the fact that we had that, raw pace option if spin was drying up a little bit. I think it helped the spinners, knowing that Mark Wood's coming running in at one end, and it was that sort of what I do like about having a pace bowler in there is it can disrupt the rhythm of that. And with our part-time bowlers being Root, who's going to bowl spin as well, and Stokes isn't going to bowl, there is an option there. But what are your options? It's Jimmy, it's Mark Wood,
Ollie Robinson,
bowled well in Pakistan, albeit different pitches. So there's still food for thought for England, despite being 1-0 up in the series. I do expect. I think they mentioned Leach is going to be injured, so I think that 4 spin option has probably died down now.
Well, no, I think they will.
When I mean 4 spin, I mean Bashir, Ahmed.
You mean a full spin?
Yeah.
Attack.
Not counting
Take Wood out and put Bashir in.
Potentially, yeah. I think that's with Leach's injury might have been put on ice for now.
What do you think about Rehan? Would you pick him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to say that the least impressive. I think there's still ability. I really like Rehan. I mentioned that before. I think we should hopefully see that killer googly come out a few more times. I'd stick with Rehan. I think he could really benefit from the experience. It's more about, do I play Jimmy or Mark Wood? Am I preserving Mark Wood is my sort of go-to thought for this Test match.
And if Leach is injured, who are you bringing in for Leach?
That's the thing. I think the stage is set for Bashir to come in, of all his visa complications. I think there's quite a good narrative there, isn't it, for him to come onto the scene and cause India problems on the pitch. I don't know. It's one of those, isn't it? I looked at the team that was for this first innings, and I said, I think you mentioned Anderson. I wouldn't mind him playing that. It wasn't too hard to digest, was it? You could look at his team and go like, it made sense.
Yeah.
So England have got a few options there to look at, but the fact that they're 1-0 up gives them that breathing space where they don't have to perhaps over-labour this fought.
Yeah, I think it's if you bring Leach in, if you bring Bashir in for Leach, I think you've got even less experience then, haven't you? So the Englishman in me, the non-Bazball cricket thinker, says, would you want somebody like Anderson in the attack that if it's going wrong for Hartley or Root or Rehan, that you can get a bit more control in the game? However, control isn't particularly a Bazball word. The other thought I've thought is if Leach can bowl and can do your overs, you've got Rehan, Hartley and Leach who all turn it away from the right-hander. If you brought Lawrence in for Rehan, you probably keep the batting.
Yeah.
You get another off-spin option with Root. Has a bit, of an unusual bowling action. And you've got a good batsman who could probably bat 7, and you could have Folks at 8, extend the batting lineup.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to direct swap Leach for Bashir. I'm going to keep Mark Wood in there because if we're in the business of striking in this second test, I think you've got a good vibe amongst those players. You don't have to overuse Mark Wood. You can be careful with him.
Yeah.
We've got lots of spin option in there, so you can use him in short bursts. And what I do like about Mark Wood is and he's shown this in the Ashes, if we do have a bit of a wobble and we start to have one collapse, he's worth a good 25, 30 runs, isn't he, at times, swinging the bat about from a useful tail ender. And, having that raw pace option when we need it, we want to be going into this test match thinking we've got a real good opportunity to go 2-0.
Yeah.
So I'd keep the same and I'd just directly swap for Bashir as my option.
If you had more faith in your spinners, you'd probably have both Anderson and Wood, wouldn't you? And then 2 spinners. But I understand why we need to back it out with spinners because you're just looking for the guy who has a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to start on Friday. You're going to be watching this time?
I will, yes. I'm free this weekend, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll be tuning in. I doubt it'll be a 5-day test match, really. It'll probably be a 3-day.
See what gets thrown up.
Yeah.
Great scenes as well on that morning. West Indies were always in this game at the Gabba. It was a day-night test, pink ball. West Indies had got themselves into a good position. Australia were clawing it back in Australia style. I think you messaged me at the time saying they're always in the game, Australia. They've got the bowling attack to skittle people. They've got gritty batsmen. You kind of woke up to the news of Shamar Joseph again. Took 7 wickets, and there's it's a shame that the crowd was so empty because you've got an Ian Smith moment, haven't you? Ian Smith's on comments, and he's great.
He's one of the best at that.
Oh, those final, the embers of the game where the final thing happens. He obviously did the World Cup commentary in England, didn't he? He takes this ball. He's got. I said to my dad this morning, watching Joseph, it kind of reminded me a bit of Mantini. Like kind of skiddy sort of bowler coming in, running in quick, and it just sort of gives you that batsman sensation where it's quicker than you think. And then Hazelwood kind of prods his bat out there. I mean, he's no Brian Lara, is he? Hazelwood, but completely goes him, and then they all run off, and then it's obviously an ecstasy, and then the aftermath of it all. And it kind of, it's the problem with West Indies is that anything they do is always harked back with raw emotion, isn't it, to what they once were. Yeah. And I think it was a symbol for this team more than ever that, despite being essentially, it was a much weakened team, people like Holder are playing, I think, is it the ILT 20? In my view, overdone franchise tournament. And for this kid to come on the scene and take 7 wickets, it's brilliant. It's heartwarming, isn't it, for anyone that loves international cricket like we do? Yeah,
it's a real. It is a real giant killing, isn't it? It's almost the FA Cup was on at the weekend. It's one of those kind of moments where even I suppose Pat Cummins as the opposition captain had to take his nod his head, take his hat off to the story and what it means and kind of the narrative for Test cricket. I mean, Shamar Joseph's story is really interesting. Comes from an area of Guyana that only got colour TV about 10 years ago.
You have to get a boat to get to major transport links as well. I've heard.
I don't know about that, but yeah, obviously completely kind of remote areas where obviously the technology that we've been used to over the last 10, 20 years is miles off to paint a picture. And I suppose this is a lad who has had the tutelage of Curtly Ambrose.
That's right, yeah. There was Curtly Ambrose, for those that don't know, has set up like I think it's overseas investment bowling academy to find raw talent in the West Indies and bring them through.
I think he was working as a security guard up until recently. Obviously, he's 24, comes in, played the last day, believe it or not, when he got the 7 wickets with a broken toe.
Yeah.
They weren't expecting him to play on the morning of the game.
Yeah.
Comes to the ground, manages to get out there on the pitch and then delivers that. One thing that I think, from a really selfish point of view, but it's very kind of heartwarming for the English summer, is you want to see these West Indies bowlers come over. You're hoping that Shamar Joseph is part of that team, and there's an extra level of intrigue now in our own summer that we thought would be quite a boring one.
The sport in itself is still, I listen to. Did you listen to the CEO of the West Indies?
Yes.
Is it Graves?
Jonathan Graves.
Nasser and Michael Aberton. If you've not listened to it, it's really worth a listen. He talks about the challenges of the West Indies and where they are and how financial implications can set them back so much. But he did talk about how strong the passion is for cricket in the region. And I think people might look at it and go, whenever you watch England and the West Indies, it's a predominantly English crowd, particularly in the big tourist islands like Barbados and Antigua. But a lot of it stems from West Indies losing so much over the years. A lot of the fans in which have lost a lot of perseverance towards the West Indies, which isn't a country, it's a set of islands. And I think the brand of the international side has diminished massively. I don't think that the individual sort of passions for cricket on the islands have. And I think from what I gather, and there's some great media outlets there, like the Caribbean Cricket Podcast is great for supplying information about the West Indies. And the feel very much was that all the islands were talking about this. Yeah. It put a spring in everybody's step to see the team go over, beat the best test side in the world on paper, the test world champions, and things like that, moments like that. I mean, people are calling it that. I've seen West Indians say it's one of the biggest. It's the biggest win in their lifetime. Like West Indians, it can rekindle an entire passion for the sport. And don't be surprised, come like you said, the summer when West Indies are coming over, to see more, people of Caribbean heritage rock up to these test matches and back a team that is quite likeable, led by Craig Brathwaite, which is he's a kind of a dying breed or one of a kind, isn't he? He's a test specialist, isn't he? Yeah. Of all the Caribbeans produced in our lifetime has mainly been white ball specialists. He is very much a default red ball player, isn't he?
Yeah, and he gave a brilliant interview at the end of the game, didn't he?
It was very Caribbean-esque, wasn't it?
It was just,
It was like swaggers of old, wasn't it?
Yeah, and obviously took great offence to Rodney Hogg. I think he called him weak.
Rodney Hogg's like he's like a 70s Australian test player.
Yeah.
So he's obviously rubbed shoulders with like the Michael Holdings of the world, hasn't he?
Yeah, and obviously
there's actually a video surfacing where he backs away from the ball and Michael Holding takes his stumps off.
Yeah, and I think there are kind of
there's lazy comparisons in there.
There's certain media outlets in Australia, aren't there, were being brash and bold and saying the most kind of outlandish thing will go far. So I think obviously Craig Brathwaite punched back, showed his bicep.
Rightly so, it.
Yeah, and fair enough. England don't win in Australia. It's really difficult to win in Australia. Not many sides do. It's only really India that have managed it recently. To go there and win a test in the state that West Indies cricket is considered to be in, it's a brilliant achievement. Yeah.
So hopefully, West Indies can build on from that. Great to have Test cricket spoke about so much, isn't it? And tours of recent, I think we've looked at this. Tours of Australia over recent years have been quite familiar, haven't they? Australia building big totals, the team getting nowhere near, Australia batting again. It's just refreshing to see.
Yeah, it is. Although the Australian summer's finished now, hasn't it? I think it was only 2 tests for West Indies. 3 tests. Was it 3 tests for
Yeah.
Pakistan?
The bigger picture of this all, though, is the crowds have been really good, haven't they, Australia? They've brought in good test crowds,
Yeah.
considered the opposition they're playing. I think their Big Bash League has done well. So it's a country where cricket is thriving. Hopefully that can spread across the entire sort of ICC members.
Yeah, it's a good little period for us, isn't it? Is enjoy it while it lasts. Enjoy this India series because the IPL will soon be here with those months and months of endless T20 cricket. So yeah, enjoy it. What's your prediction for the second test? Who's your top run scorer? Who's your leading wicket
It's a tough
taker?
one. My heart says that England can win this next test match. I think India are a little bit of an injured animal at the minute.
What do England need to win it? Who's going to pull it out of the bag?
I think they need an inspired spin performance again.
Okay.
I think if England can show that their bowlers can do collateral damage, I think it's going to really put the cat amongst the pigeons for Indian cricket. And I think Stephen Finn mentioned it. The way to win India is rock them, get them flapping. It's a cricket-obsessed country. If you can get in the heads, you can get them arguing, get them falling out.
Yeah.
England's best chance is there. What it does do, it does set that hero narrative that Kohli comes back and saves India.
Yeah.
That is still on the cards because I believe he's coming back on the third test.
Yes. No. Yeah. I think that he's scheduled to be back. The one thing for champion Bashir selection is that the last 3 spin debutants, Hartley, Rehan and Will Jacks, have all come away with 5-fers from the debut. So maybe we chuck Bashir in, match-winning 5-fer. Won't be bad.
Not if I've ever mentioned this, but I'm flying out to India on the 28th of February. Not directly going to be in line for the cricket. I'm going to be at the Dharmashala test match.
Very nice.
So I'm hoping that this creates
the series is still alive.
The series is still alive. I think it, by all means, it should be. If you look at it, even if England are to lose the next test match is 2-1, I'm thinking the probability right now is that we could have an alter play for the last test match. So we thought about how we can be more inventive with the podcast. We're obviously limited on resources and time compared to other outlets out there, but we like to try and bring some kind of interactive.
Yes, you're going to be our reporter on the ground.
Yeah, it's new to me. I've never been to India. I don't know what to expect. I've got a bucket cap. I'm pleased to know. My girlfriend's mother and father bought me for my birthday.
Apparently, you weren't allowed sun cream in Hyderabad. Yeah, we weren't letting fans in with bottles of water or bottles of sun cream.
So you're just supposed to frazzle.
Was it Hyderabad or was it Ahmedabad? I can't remember. Anyway,
so you think this bucket cap could be a very valuable present?
Yes, I think that you could do the bucket cap and maybe apply your sun cream factor 50 before you leave to the ground because you might not be able to apply any when you're in there.
P20 is it that visible one you can get?
Yeah,
it's expensive that, but I use it in Sicily and I still burn.
Yeah, Darren Goff was talking about a watch that he had on TalkSport that applied sun cream, so maybe you need one of that.
A watch?
He had a watch that you could open the face and there was a sun cream that you put on.
Right, very well.
Yes,
well, everyone enjoy the next test match. We'll do a pod before I go to England.
Yes, we will. We could probably, with the times and everything, try and do a watch along at some point. Might be good. One Saturday morning. Thanks for listening. Basking in the Heist of Hyderabad. We don't know when the next one might be. Hopefully the next test match. We shall see. Thank you everybody for joining us and we'll catch you soon.